Boom. All right. So we're live and we're recording on Zoom. Welcome. Thanks everyone who's tuning in and watching and joining us. We have a really interesting conversation coming up today with my friend who is going to talk about traditional Chinese medicine. We actually work out of the same studio in Camillus, and that's how I met her. And I'm really looking forward to this. We've had a lot of interest in this particular conversation. So without further ado, welcome Marisa Maher. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Carl?
Feeling pretty good. The tea
How's
is
the
good.
recovery going?
Mm,
There you go.
I got my tea from Marissa, and I don't like tea. If you know me, you don't. I don't like tea. This tea is really good, so I feel like it's doing good things for me.
Good. It is a detox tea, so hopefully during this time it's helping your liver, helping everything, kind of heal as well.
Yeah, you know what's really interesting is my blood work came back like perfect last
Awesome.
week
Yeah.
because the liver panel that was messed up for a while. I don't know if it was the hepatitis A that I had,
Hmm.
which could have been.
Yeah.
But yeah, it went from out, way 70 something down into the normal range in the 40s. So I'm really happy. Um, all the other stuff is good. Something's happening. So yeah, it's interesting. I've done a lot of traveling around the world, and I've only been to one country in Asia, Singapore.
Mhm.
But even in my travels in other areas around this country, other countries, I've heard about ancient Chinese or traditional Chinese medicine, Eastern medicine versus Western. And I've learned some things from some people who are very knowledgeable. But then I met you, and since I met you, I've learned the most, and I find it really fascinating. And so I wanted to have you with me, which I appreciate your time greatly, because there's so much to this. I mean, if we go back and take a look at the history of Chinese medicine, how
Yeah.
far back are we going?
So basically, the first known records of acupuncture or even like the herbal parts is about 3,000 years ago. So this one, we say it's an ancient medicine, an ancient technique. Like it really goes back to ancient China times.
Wow. So
Yeah.
I'm curious to know overall if this is even a question that's answerable, what is it based on? What is traditional Chinese medicine based on, or what's the overall generalized 44,000 view approach, if you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. So, I mean, basically, what traditional Chinese medicine is, it's not just acupuncture, it's other modalities included in acupuncture. Um, so, basically, what acupuncture is you're inserting these very fine needles into certain points on the body. We view the body in 12 meridians, which is basically like pathways that run from head to toe. Some of them do, some run from your chest to your hand, but basically these pathways are cover every part of your body. So when we look at relationships to acupuncture, if you have a condition that's wrong with your elbow or something, you like, we can treat locally, but then we also will treat like distally, whether it's in like your leg or the opposite side of your arm, and it's because of the way these pathways run through the body. So that's why it's amazing how acupuncture works, because you don't necessarily, or even if you can't treat a body part locally, you can treat distally because of how these pathways run, which is fascinating and why it works as well as it does. And basically, what we're doing with acupuncture is influencing the qi, which is kind of your life force in the body, and blood. And what we're looking for is if there's blood not moving in an area, then we want to use acupuncture to move the blood, basically. If you're not having enough blood in a part of a body, we want to supplement the blood and make blood so it's circulating better. So that's like one facet of traditional Chinese medicine, which is acupuncture. But then you also have Eastern dietary therapy, because in our acupuncture programs, and even way back in ancient textbooks, we learned about how important the diet is. And I think now more than ever, with autoimmune conditions, inflammatory conditions, we can really see how what we eat impacts our body and our well-being, not just physical, but mental well-being as well. So that's also a facet of traditional Chinese medicine, looking at the food that we're eating, and it even corresponds to like different times of the year and different types of food you should be eating, which is really cool as well. We always look at how the environment impacts our body too.
Yeah.
And then there's also things such as cupping, which is making like the vacuum, the suction, which can really help with like painful conditions. Sorry, that's my dog.
That's okay.
And then we have moxa, which is using an herb that's like a warming technique. Again, good for painful conditions. If you have coldness in the body, really good for internal warming. We have Gua Sha, which is like using traditionally it's like a spoon, like literally a Chinese spoon, very cheap, but like other professionals, they'll kind of use like Graston tools, which are like metal tools, but basically it's a
Right.
scraping technique
Mm-hmm.
influencing the fascia of the body. And basically what traditional Chinese medicine is combining all these, and herbs too. So kind of like with your tea, you know, with the herbal medicine. With my program, you had to be trained, yes, separately. So it was like 2 different master's degrees I had to get. So there was one in acupuncture, one in herbal medicine. So you can have one or the other, or you can have both. So basically, traditional
Right.
Chinese medicine is combining everything. It's not just one thing that you're doing, but combining everything for the well-being of your patient.
So holistic is a word that might be appropriate, treating
Yes,
the
for
body
sure.
as a whole unit. You know,
Yes,
it's
yeah.
really interesting. Um, I have a number of thoughts going on, but even if we look at just one aspect of just the fascia, right? I mean,
Mhm.
fascia, if you start doing, look at a dissection lab of a cadaver, you start peeling the fascia off of a calf, let's say, it
Mhm.
doesn't stop at the end of the calf. It keeps going up the fascial line. So, you know,
Exactly.
this right arm is connected with my left leg,
Mhm.
anterior, posterior, same thing, and all these fascial lines. So it's really, we're going to have some questions too, which is
Yeah, of
great.
course.
It's really interesting. I keep learning more and more and more about how really every system in the body works with every other system in the body, and if one is
Yes.
not functioning optimally, then the others will, they come down at least a little bit.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So
I got my
actually,
wires crossed.
Sorry about that. My
no,
computer.
don't worry. So we have a real dear friend of mine, Laura, almost is just across the border of into Mexico. She lives near Laredo, Texas, but in Mexico.
Okay.
She's a lady I met a couple years ago, an
Mhm.
amazing lady I met who lives with Parkinson's. She's done, thank you, Laura, a lot of translating for me when I teach in Spanish.
Mhm.
No hablo todo yet. But she has a question here, and then we're going to be bobbing and weaving a little in this
Yeah, that's
conversation. But
fine.
so, oh, and Danny Torres from San Luis Potosi. Hola, Danny. Great to see you. So, Laura says, what can help the Parkinson's community with pain issues, rigidity, and anxiety in regards to ancient Chinese or traditional Chinese medicine?
Yeah,
Over to you.
so I mean, it's been fascinating working with you because you do work with Parkinson's patients and patients that have neurological conditions. And what I tend to utilize is electrostimulation, which is more a
Yeah.
modern thing. It wasn't, basically what they were doing in ancient times, but kind of modernizing acupuncture and using like combining like an e-stim unit, which you can get from a PT or a chiropractor, but you're hooking it right up to the needles, which is basically creating a more intense sensation, but for people who have neurological problems. There have been studies that have shown that acupuncture can impact the nerves, can impact the central nervous system, um, the whole network. It's really amazing what study has been shown. So basically, how I use acupuncture with people who have these neurological type of conditions is using that electrical stimulation to basically make that brain muscle connection or the
Mm-hmm.
brain nervous, the whole nervous system connection. And that can really help with pain wise, even with tremors. It can really help make it so they decrease considerably or stop altogether, depending on how severe the condition is. In my schooling, in my clinic, we worked with a lot of stroke recovery patients who had like lasting tremors. So we would do acupuncture e-stim on the affected side, and it really helped reduce the amount of tremors that they have, if not completely got rid of them altogether. So that's how I utilize acupuncture and electrical stimulation.
So it sounds like that's a way of diminishing maybe some of the symptoms, maybe some pain, increasing blood flow, and improving quality of life, which is what we're all after,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
Feel
and like
better.
acupuncture too, it has I think people sometimes have this perception that acupuncture is very painful. And in reality, it shouldn't be painful. And that's what's kind of nice when people have anxiety. I have a lot of people, especially during these COVID times, that come into me with anxiety, with a lot of high stress. And acupuncture, through ear acupuncture, through kind of local calming points. And the thing is to calm down somebody. You don't necessarily have to use acupuncture. Like you can do acupressure, which is using acupuncture points, but using, your fingers and stimulating, where you're still calming down the person, which can help a lot with anxiety. I've had some people come in with such bad anxiety that they don't even want to be needled right away. So you just do a little relaxation protocol. It gets them calmed down. It gets the central nervous system to, the sympathetic nervous system to kind of just relax. And then you can needle, and it's no big deal, and they're relaxed. Some people fall asleep on the table. It's great.
Yeah, I fell asleep almost on the table. So I had acupuncture one time. It was in mid-December. When Marisa administered, and I had no idea what it'd be like. There's only one needle that hurt, just a tiny, not even hurt. It's a tiny bit of, like, I felt it
Intense.
because I was really, really super tight up in here, right? Otherwise, I didn't feel like anything.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting. It's really cool. So my friend Jan Heller in Detroit just checked in, and you sort of answered this with not technically. I mean, the actual essential tremors. We didn't talk about essential tremors, but a lot of people have essential tremors. So I'm just surmising or guessing that you can probably help with that too.
Yeah, whether it's through e-stim or just certain points that you can use, whether it's like supplementing or draining techniques. So acupuncture, you can do different techniques to do different things with the body. So with tremors, you can do e-stim, or you can just do some other points that are good for, indicated for tremors.
I'm curious, besides blood flow, because we know that lack of blood flow usually creates a problem, and what about lymphatic fluids and the lymphatic system, that aquarium that we have in our body?
Yeah, it's interesting because basically in Chinese medicine, we look at different imbalances in the body, and that can be in excess or can be depleted in the body. And one of the excess that we see is dampness, what we call dampness, but it really can be sometimes equated to the lymphatic system. And especially when you see people who have, or even like cardiovascular issues, when people have had heart problems and they have the edema kind of in their lower legs or one leg, then we consider that kind of like an accumulation of dampness in a part of the body. So again, we can utilize acupuncture to help drain the dampness.
So that'll help to get some of the lymphatic fluid going.
Yes, yeah.
Because I know, I've been to so many different things as a student and been learning from people who attend my workshops. But I remember one particular event in Toronto where they were doing a lot of poking and prodding, especially like behind here, behind the ears.
Yes,
So,
yes.
excuse me, it's not supposed to hurt really when you push in, and if it does, they were saying how that is an indication of probably some kind of lymphatic blockage,
Yes.
or it's moving really slow.
Yeah.
What I've been doing, I should do it all my life, but really since I was, uh, oh boy, brain fog just kicked in. Tested positive. Since I tested positive in mid-December with COVID, I decided to actually. You were part of the inspiration for this, even though we didn't really talk about it, or maybe we did. I have no idea. I can't remember that much still, but the brush. It's a really nice brush that I have, and I just brush up towards the heart. Start
Yes,
work
yeah.
my way up. I'll tell you, man, because I never wake up feeling like I want to do anything ever in my whole life. The last thing I want to do is actually get out of bed, but I have to. So I
Yeah.
do. And then when I do the brush, I mean, that's better than take a shower as far as
Yeah.
getting energy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what's going on with that? I know I'm waking up a lot of nerves when I brush, but is that
Yeah.
maybe helping with some of that fluid dynamic and increasing flow?
For sure, yeah. I mean, because even like part of Gua Sha, which is that scraping technique that we use, we
Mm.
actually do use that. Like, I have a patient who will have like chronic ear infections, and we'll actually do some like facial Gua Sha to help drain everything. So, just that motion of pushing and kind of directing your blood or chi in a certain direction can really help open up things and help like kind of get rid of those blockages that you can get in your body. So it makes sense that that makes you feel so good.
Yeah, it's really great. Um, I remember going to my not my doctor, my current doctor. There was a little break where I wasn't seeing my GP for a while because he moved to a different place, and then now I go there. But in between, when I couldn't see him for a few months, I had something going on that was really weird. And I remember talking with
Mhm.
that doctor about, well, what about my lymphatic system? And she just looks at me like, well, if you had a problem there, your legs would be really swollen. You don't have
Mm.
a problem there. And I don't say this to in any kind of derogatory, or I don't mean to diminish anyone in the
Yeah.
Western or traditional Western medicine world in our
Mhm.
society. And my son's a doctor, so
Yeah.
fortunately, though, he's one of those ones who tell you there's a lot more we need to know. We need to look at the body differently than most
Mhm.
doctors do here, but they don't talk about lymphatic system evidently in their education, and it's so
Yeah.
important. Yeah.
Yeah. I always say like one of the biggest things about Chinese medicine is the concept of yin and yang. So basically the opposites, right? But what we learn in our theories is that while they're polar opposites, they can't exist without each other.
Mhm.
And they're created within each other. And I really believe that is kind of the same with Eastern and Western medicine. Like, yes, they have different branches, they look at the body sometimes differently, but we have to have like both viewpoints to really help the patient in the best way, which is one of the reasons why I believe so much in integrative health,
Mhm.
because I can do a lot with acupuncture, but there specialists in PT and Parkinson's, like you do, chiropractors, MDs, like we all, I believe when we work together, that's what benefits the patient the most.
Yeah, and I also want to just clarify that we need our medical community here, and I
Yes.
I wrote that in my
Mhm.
book too. I mean, this is not to say we're here to replace them
Right, of course.
by any means. I mean, we need them.
Hmm.
Um, so I really like your approach there too, especially the integrated thing, working together
Hmm.
is the key. I have a question here from Jan, and actually I have another question based on this one. What causes migraines, and is traditional Chinese medicine something that can help migraines?
It is so interesting because I was just having this conversation with one of my patients the other day because she comes into me with migraines. And so basically, traditionally, if you go to your primary care physician, you say, "Oh, I have a migraine," they'll just give you a certain medication for your migraine. And that's great. And sometimes it works really well. Sometimes they have to change it depending on how the side effects. But with Chinese medicine, what we're looking at is we're not looking at like, oh, the Western diagnosis or of a migraine. We're looking at, okay, so you have pain in your head region, but what is causing that migraine? We're all about finding the root cause of what's happening because we're not
Mhm.
trying to be like a band-aid and treating like, just the head pain. Like, we want to find out why are you having it. So it's an interesting question because there can be so many reasons why you have migraine. So it could be from lack of blood vacuity. It could be from stagnation of blood, where blood's not moving in a certain area. So even sometimes it can be like if you have really tight shoulders, tight neck, that can cause a migraine, but
Mm.
sometimes it can be like lack of circulation throughout the whole body that can cause a migraine. And it's really interesting because right now I'm dealing with a patient who gets migraines when she ovulates during her menstrual cycle. So
Mhm.
there are so many different ways you can have a migraine, so many different things that can cause a migraine in Chinese medicine. So that's kind of our job, is finding out, is it a repletion issue where there's too much, there's an excess of something going on, or is there not enough of something going on? And that's why we ask the questions that we do to find out what is causing it. And then based on that is where we come up with our diagnosis, and we can help, whether it's through acupuncture or through herbs as well. They really help with migraines too.
So
So it's
interesting.
a broad answer, but it's because it's, it's
Well, there are a
very
lot of,
specific to the person.
yeah, okay. That makes sense. It's
Mhm.
funny. And Jan, I see your other thing here about lymph. So I'm going to mention that in a minute because I had that same question. All right. So what's, I can't relate to migraines. And the
Mhm.
reason is I've never had one.
Mhm.
As a matter of fact, I think in my, not to turn this towards me, but I will just
Mhm.
for a minute in case anyone else has this kind of thing, especially because of COVID. Before
Mhm.
COVID, literally in my life, I might have had a handful of headaches ever.
Mhm.
I didn't know what it felt like. I hadn't had one in
Yeah.
years. Then on December 17th, 4 days before I saw you, and I also got tested for COVID that day, but the next day I
Mhm.
came back negative. So I
Mhm.
come in, I see you. I test that
Mhm.
day too later because I felt so bad and I was
Yeah.
positive. I was
Yeah.
paranoid. I was going to infect you, even though I had
Yeah.
an N95 on. So
Yeah.
glad that you're okay though.
Thank you. Yes.
If I had known, I would have not have shown up. You know
Yeah.
that, but I started having headaches, and I have one. Actually, have one right now. It's very mild, but
Mhm.
every single day.
Mhm.
Now, when do they come on? This one just came on like 10 minutes ago.
Mhm.
I can't seem to correlate it to anything. Um, I don't know if it's a COVID type of thing. I just had a long conversation with Dr. Luigi Bacuto
Mhm.
yesterday about long hauler symptoms.
For
I just
sure.
figure it's all going to go away at some point. I'll just keep working on, keep working on getting healthy, getting back to normal.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, but this migraine thing, it makes sense. Like Dr. Barry, who I think owns our building that we work out of, you and
Mhm.
me, he's down the
Yep.
road. He's the internal. Do you know him?
I
Intern-
actually know somebody who's related to him, but I don't know him personally.
Oh, he's
Yeah.
so cool. But he sums it up in a Dr. Barry way, which is quite humorous. He says, us humans, all we are is just a big squishy bag of chemicals, hormones, and fluids that interact with each other.
Yeah.
We're very complicated.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
We really are. We really are. Yes.
So Jan is thinking something that I'm thinking, and this is might lymph flow, lack of, excess, whatever,
Mhm.
be
Mhm.
a contributor to a migraine or a headache?
Of course, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, that's always especially if you have buildup. So in my program, we did take Western medicine classes, which was part of our program, which is great.
Mhm.
But we did learn how to do like basic neurological testing and just kind of lymph testing as well. So like, if you feel tenderness in this area or even in your armpit, sometimes you'll feel
Mhm.
tenderness, which is another
Yeah.
lymph spot. Yeah, I mean, if you have excess of that, that could definitely be, a cause of migraines for sure.
Interesting. So I want to dial back to something because there are a lot of people I know of who have essential tremors.
Mm-hmm.
What would your approach be to working with somebody to try to settle those down?
Yeah, so I mean, really, it's kind of figuring out when the tremors happen because as weird as it may sound, some people's tremors get the worst when they're under a lot of stress. So if
Makes
they're feeling
sense. Yeah.
anxiety, if they're feeling stress, that's when their tremors start to get really bad. So, if that's the case, and I'll kind of look at, okay, not only treating like the muscle itself with Easton, but also making sure that I'm doing a calming treatment so that way it helps prevent anxiety in the future. So that way they don't have that feeling of like high stress, high anxiety, and then their tremors, tend to decrease because they're in a calmer state.
Okay.
But then also just kind of looking, so again, like what is causing the tremors, what's triggering the tremors, is it constant, and sometimes even weather can impact it too. Certain, like if it's
Really?
really warm out, and
Wow.
this is with MS too, like the weather can impact your, and fibro too. I found out I work with a lot of fibro patients. So
Mm-hmm.
the weather can really impact, if it's cold out, all of a sudden your fibro, your tremors, your MS gets really bad. If it's hot out, it makes symptoms worse. So it's kind of, again, treating with like opposites. So So if like heat makes it worse, we're going to do some cooling techniques on you, whether it's cooling liniments, cooling herbs, just kind of like a draining technique. So with acupuncture, so it really depends on like figuring out the triggers of the tremors, what exactly is making it worse. And that's why like with initial intake with acupuncture, I'm asking so many questions that don't seem like related at all to what's going on, you know, but it's like it creates a full picture for me and can kind of help me figure out, well, what's really going on here?
Excuse
Why
me,
is
I'm
this
sorry.
happening? Are you okay?
No, I remember that too, because I filled out that form for you. And of course, you know, I have my own form, and I might have taken a couple questions from yours to put on mine.
That's okay. Yeah.
You know, because the more we know about somebody,
Mm-hmm.
the more it can help us to have an understanding of
For sure.
maybe why something's going on or what a cause might be.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, it's, you know, it's so funny. I was telling somebody the other day, I said, yeah, not that I'm like, I know all that much. Yes, I know more than your average person about certain things. But when it comes down to it, you know, I put out a book last year. I got another one coming out at the end of the month. Sometimes I really feel like I really don't know anything, seriously, because when there are these moments like kind of now in a way, I have like, I can compartmentalize things too fairly well. But in one way, I'm saying, we are so complicated. We are complicated. It's
Mm-hmm.
amazing to me how sophisticated, how complicated the body is, and to me, it's magical too, right? Because
Yes.
like,
Yeah.
how the heck do we even, you know, I mean, how could we even be here, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's especially, you know, when you look at things like some of the things that people go through. Let's just say a friend of mine who's 35 right now, when she was 16, had a heart transplant. 6 years ago, had a kidney transplant. Probably getting another transplant of each. Been through all kinds of, you know, flat line on the table 8 years ago, 9 years ago, because of the heart was rejecting. And
Yeah.
it's amazing to me, she's still kicking and she's doing really well. And you might have met her. She was driving me around for a while after Emily, after I had my
Oh, yes.
cornea
Yeah.
thing, right? That after
Yeah.
the cornea thing, after a while, it just got
Mm-hmm.
weird for a bit, and now it's great. But anyways, bottom line is what our bodies can withstand. Uh,
Yeah.
in that way is one thing. Abuse wise, you know,
Mm-hmm.
some people can abuse their bodies, whether it's substance abuse or just other abuse, and yet here we are. You know, we can withstand so much.
Yeah.
It's amazing. But what I'm also interested in too is, because I know you have a real solid, strong background in nutrition,
Mm-hmm.
and that was actually my major at SU just a few years ago when I went through that program. But the thing is you know, I'm sorry, SU, I love you, but it needs to go deeper than the traditional education about nutrition, because I really wonder how much of this leaky gut stuff, or I'm sorry, autoimmune stuff, is caused by what we're putting in our bodies. Because
Yeah.
off camera, before we went live, I'd love you to maybe just expand upon this. It seems, I'm just surmising,
Mm-hmm.
that there's a larger percentage of people now than ever of the population with autoimmune disorders. And I
Mm-hmm.
really wonder how much of that has to do with environment, our dietary, and what we put in, maybe what we're around.
Mm-hmm.
Um, can you elaborate on that a little bit for us?
Yeah, I mean, so I have a family member that was diagnosed with Crohn's disease at the age of, I want to say in her 30s, and she's currently in her 60s. First diagnosed. Um, so they understood that she had Crohn's, but they didn't know what to do now that she was diagnosed with Crohn's. So they were like, okay, we'll cut out gluten. And that was basically, you know, just be careful of what you eat. That's basically what they were suggesting, you know. Um, and it was so interesting because before kind of like the gluten-free craze like kind of kicked in, it was really hard to get gluten-free foods, like, you
I
know,
remember.
gluten-free pasta, that stuff
Yeah.
did not exist. And when they did exist, they were really gross, you know, like the intention was good, but the taste was not there yet.
No.
So it was extremely difficult to be gluten-free. because it was hard to find substitutions that tasted good. So now it's so interesting to me, because now it's like you go into here, Wegmans is, what everyone loves and goes to. And so now it's like you go to Wegmans or Trader Joe's, wherever you go, and there's a whole aisle, like a whole area designated to like gluten-free
A
things,
big
or like
aisle. Yeah.
lactose free. Yeah, and it's amazing to me. So it's really cool that we have these substitutions, and even for people who are vegetarians or vegans, it's really nice that they're having these like substitutions that they can do to make sure that they're getting enough protein, which is really important. But it is really fascinating to see kind of how diet trends kind of come into our society and then as quickly kind of fade out, because like at one point, doctors were saying like, have butter, eat all the butter you possibly can. And same with cigarettes, like back in the day, cigarettes, or doctors were really telling people to smoke cigarettes, for weight loss and things like that. So it's really interesting to see how, and with that's growing, expanding, being worth billions of dollars, and it was so interesting to me going to China to study abroad. And there it's like eating locally is so much cheaper than eating at fast food restaurants. So if you go to a fast food restaurant like McDonald's, Pizza Hut, anything like that, it's probably triple the price that you're paying than a local like noodle shop, which to me, I feel like that should be the model here, like not having cheap fast food restaurants where it's quick and convenient, but having it where eating organic shouldn't be like that expensive, and I actually was just looking into making like a vertical garden for when the weather
Yeah.
warms up. I really want to make a vertical garden and kind of have like a hydroponic system. I
Great.
was watching a few videos on that because I think the emphasis on eating locally, like eating from local farms, markets, and things like that is so important, because when you think about how far these foods have to travel to get to you, like when you see foods that are from whole different countries, it's like how many nutrients like are actually left in this product, like bananas are great for you, but if they're coming all the way, from like where I was born, Ecuador or somewhere like that, like how much of the nutrients that it originally had is still coming to you, or what did it have to be treated with, pesticides, whatever,
Yeah.
to be able to last that long? So that's what I think is concerning now.
Interesting. I remember one of the statistics, I seem to remember numbers very well. So in SU, in their program, they did get into this. This one class got into some of this, and it was pretty interesting. It was my favorite class during that program about nutrition, talking about your average tomato travels at least 1,500 miles to get to your plate.
Yes.
And that tomato was probably not growing in a way where it has that much nutrient density, right?
Yeah.
So it could be nutrient deficient. It's maybe when you cut in, it's kind of pink or white and not red.
Yeah.
So I find that really interesting. Another thing too is I went to a special presentation. This is going on 9 years ago. Wow. I think it was 9 years ago this month or 8 years ago, one or the other. The New York Times came out with an article kind of like busting Doritos. What happened was I mean, they weren't like in trouble for anything. It wasn't like that. But what it had to do with, and this is where it really got me into the food science, food engineering.
Yeah.
You remember, I don't know if you remember the old Jay Leno commercials, and this is going back, it's got to be 20 years, where he's advertising for Doritos and he's holding one. He says, I bet you can't eat just one. Can't. You can't do that because they make it so you can't. They make it so that you want more. It's got that magical mix of flavors that makes you want to have more. Kind of like Coca-Cola has, and probably other sodas too. I just remember Coke has sugar in it, but it's just enough salt to keep you thirsty, so you want another Coke, but you don't taste the salt because there's just enough sugar to cover it up.
Yeah.
And then the other thing too is with all the fake sugars, I guess there's like 57 names for sugar now, something like that. Or there used to be 56. I think they've approved a new one that's the same as aspartame. But bottom line is these chemicals and fake stuff, they go in and your body doesn't know what to do with them because it sees it as a foreign substance and it
Which it
shoots it to
is.
different places. It's like, okay, your pancreas get whacked out. Plus,
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to hear more from you about this, because this is the end of my knowledge right here. Is my understanding is that some of that stuff is designed to interrupt the leptin hormone,
Mm-hmm.
which is the hormone that tells your brain your stomach is full. So if you don't get the message, you keep eating. And
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to admit, I'm confessing, I love Doritos. I cannot eat them, because if I
Yeah.
eat them, I'll eat the whole bag, or at least half of a big bag, because I can't stop. So don't ever give me a Dorito, please, anyone.
Yeah.
I love them. It's terrible.
No.
And I know when I put it in my body, I'm just thinking, Carl, you're stupid, but you can't stop. So
Well, I think
how,
that's like
yeah,
the crazy part is that, for healthcare professionals, we have this knowledge, right? Like we know that certain foods are bad for us, and we're like, we should not have these. But yet they've created these food and they put in these chemicals that literally alter the chemicals in our brain that give us dopamine, or give us a synthetic dopamine
yes.
to give us this satisfaction, where it creates such a craving. We're like, well, even though we have this knowledge, it overrides it to be like, well, it doesn't matter that you know this is bad for you. You still want it anyway. And I think that is the most powerful part of, processed foods, is that it does really have this kind of power over us, where it's like, and that's why sometimes, there's an argument, well, if you're not educated, then how are you supposed to know these foods are bad for you? But the thing is, you can still be educated. Like I have a master's in applied clinical nutrition, but that doesn't mean that, like, once in a while I have a craving for like McDonald's French fries, even though and I'm confessing to you, like that is
Me
my
too.
weakness. McDonald's French fries. I don't want anything else from there, but McDonald's French fries is
Mhm.
my weakness. And that's like the scary part, is that we have this knowledge. I know exactly when I put this food into my body, it's not good for me. It's not going to help me burn fat. It's going to, cause excess calories. It's going to create this like, my new sense of, satisfaction, but then it's going to go away, so it's really interesting to me. And then even when you look at like, because I used to love hot Cheetos. Like that was another thing. I used to
Oh,
love hot Cheetos.
me too.
And then we had this
Excuse me.
study where we looked at different food dyes, and we
Oh,
really
God.
dived into the world of food dyes. And if you want to go off like a deep end, that is something, and specifically red food dyes. And it's so interesting to me that in like European countries, they've banned like there's different kinds of, even just red food dyes, blue food dyes. There's different levels, there's different kinds that they can put in. But Europe has banned so many of blue food dyes, red food dyes, like yellow food dyes, but yet we still are putting them into products that we give in our country. So it's so interesting to me. It's like, why do we not have the same standard that like, Europe does, certain countries in Europe do? Because, and it's been proven how bad these are for us, but yet it somehow hasn't been, taken up. It's so bizarre to me. So
Oh, yeah. Got like 10 things in my mind. I think
yeah.
one thing I definitely want to make sure we cover is in a minute is some of the herbs, because I'm really
Yes,
curious
yes.
about what's in the mixture that I'm using for the detox. But you're right. I know this and I forgot, because I've been all over Europe teaching.
Mm-hmm.
Things are different. I mean, you can
Very.
get stuff in stores, but it's a different kind of selection.
Mm-hmm.
You can get junk food,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know. That was part of the a class I took, which is actually a sociology class. Um, and I chose to do sociology of communities, a paper about food. Oh gosh, food. What food is available?
Mm.
Food deserts. Oh
Yes,
man,
yes.
I'm just not
That's
coming up with the words lately. But so Jan says, so I've heard that conflicting stories about high fructose corn syrup.
yes.
We'll get to that one in a second
Yeah.
too. Yeah, I have a. Oh, our mutual friend is watching, who we work with.
Oh,
Hi,
okay.
Andy.
Oh,
What's up, brother?
hey.
How you doing, bro? Hope you're feeling good. Well, yeah. So rather than going on a Carl ADD, ADHD tangent, or several of them, the food deserts. It's interesting because you can
Mm,
go and get like for $4, four things off the dollar menu,
Yeah.
There you are, and you're full. Okay, so it's cheap. Well, if you go to the farmer's market, everything costs about a third of Wegmans. And I
Yeah.
love Wegmans, right? But
Yeah.
it's about a third, maybe
Yeah.
less. Another thing, too, which you said I think is really important for people to know. I actually did a webinar on this at some point in the past. Dopamine is like addictions, whether it's
Mhm.
drugs, heroin, cocaine, alcohol, sugar,
Yeah.
food. We can be
Mhm.
addicted to food because as soon as we put it in our mouth, um, well, the possibility exists that we want more because that Dorito gave me that feeling that I
Mhm.
like, the
Yep.
taste.
Mhm.
And of course, then it sits there in your stomach like a rock, just like the McDonald's fries, which
Yeah.
I
Yep.
love. And my
Yes.
wife and I love those. So we'll grab them on a road trip, every couple months. So go to Rochester or whatever to a doctor appointment. Let's get some fries for the road.
Mhm.
You get halfway there and they're sitting like a rock, but it's a dopamine rush. So that dopamine is like the molecule of more.
Mhm.
It's always
Yeah.
thinking about the future. It needs a job to do.
Yes.
And what it wants to do is drive you to something that's going to give you the feeling again.
Yes. Mhm.
Um, I will ask you this in a minute. I've been reading a book again called The Hacking of the American Mind by Dr. Robert
Mhm.
Lustig. He's in Northern
Mhm.
Cal somewhere, I think, San Francisco, talking about fructose, corn syrup, and the dangers of that as far as being
Mhm.
a foreign substance as far as the body's concerned.
Yeah.
And he even gets into, and I'll stop after this, but is different or not from sugar. Yeah, yeah. Okay, Jan. I think we're on the same page here. Is what he talks about is when this comes into your body, and this corn syrup is in so many different products these days.
Mhm.
It your body shoots it to these areas where it's not really supposed to go. It's not a
Yeah.
nutrient, and
Yeah.
it's a different type of calorie. So he even talks about if you eat 100 calories of corn syrup, you might need to burn 150 calories to burn the 100 off. If
Yes.
that
Yeah.
makes sense, because it's not the right kind of
It's not
calorie.
processed. Yeah. Yep.
So, what's your knowledge on the corn syrup situation?
I mean, I haven't like studied it, you know, specifically, but definitely, in our programs, we were told, avoid it, because it is kind of like a synthetic type of
Sure.
a synthetic molecule, synthetic type of food. So, and even kind of like when it comes to oils, I think that's another thing, like cooking, like when it comes to
Yeah.
using like virgin olive oil, good quality. I think that's the other hard thing is like you may think that, oh, I'm using olive oil, so I'm being healthy, but then it's like really looking at the quality of the olive oil, and I think that's always what gets us into murky waters. We make a substitution thinking that it's healthier, but then in reality, there's such different qualities to the different types of food. So again, when it comes down to oils, olive oil always being, really good for you, anti-inflammatory. We have the coconut oils, but then staying away from like vegetable oil, canola oil,
Mhm.
because those are not processed in your body, and and studies have shown that they can be inflammatory. So kind of the
Oh,
same thing. Yeah.
I'm glad you said that. Yeah. Yeah. Examine.com, by the way. Yes, Jan, I see that. That's a great site. Examine.
Okay.
I follow this neuroscience guy,
Hmm.
Dr. Andrew Huberman at Stanford. I just think he's amazing how he articulates in a way that I can understand about so many different things. But he
Yeah.
recommends examine.com too. I actually need to go check it out
Yeah.
more thoroughly. So inflammation, and that's a big thing. I mean,
Hmm.
another just a little interjection here is I was talking with an author recently last month, Dr. Dale Bredesen, who wrote two books, The End of Alzheimer's and The End of Alzheimer's Program. I had met him at a Maria Shriver luncheon like 3 years ago or so in New York. He is like on the forefront of this, um, let's say, slowing cognitive decline, if you
Hmm.
will, and preventing Alzheimer's, hopefully.
Yeah.
The thing that he talks about, and of course, there's a lot of research on other, cancers and Parkinson's and this and that inflammation in the gut and the bowels and even the peripheral nervous system seems to be a factor in the how these diseases come to be.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what would you recommend? And you can say anything about that you want to. Um, when you look at, I'd like to kind of tie the herbs into this.
Mm-hmm.
How can the herbs help us besides eating? Let's say we ate the optimal diet. I
Yeah.
know our friend, the dude of all dudes,
Yeah.
if you're still watching, King Dude gets the herbs from you too.
Mm-hmm.
And he
Yeah.
looks great. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
he's just he's really been so disciplined with this, way more than I have been. But he inspires me. So, Mr. Dude, thank you for that. How can herbs help us in balancing out all the stuff we put into our body? What can they do?
Yeah, so I mean, like really what I when I talk to my patients, it's like it's not going to be like one thing is going to cure all your ailments. You have to put in work too, right? So like
Mhm.
I'm here, I'm going to do my best to give you treatments to take you out of pain, to reduce inflammation, but I can only do so much, and as a patient, you have a job too to kind of live the lifestyle, because I'll give you everything that you need, but then you have to incorporate that into your life, you know?
Mhm.
And that's always sometimes the hardest part, is because you can know exactly everything that you need to do, but then it's applying it. You're like, oh man, this is harder than I thought it was going to be. So basically with herbs, like for your instance, if we're looking at a detox or you're trying to cleanse the body, what we'll do is we'll look at herbs that impact the liver, right? So that's what we're really doing. So a lot of your herbs are impacting the liver. They're helping kind of um, even kind of like with autoimmune too, like they're boosting like the good cytokines in your body, things like that.
Mhm.
And it's really interesting because there are so many studies now that are looking at individual herbs and kind of their impacts on the body. And like, I'm not like a biologist or chemistry person by any means, but it's really interesting when you can see like when they look at the breakdowns of the herbs or biochemical breakdowns and then how they impact inflammation or they impact um, like the blood, because there are some herbs that are kind of like, I don't want to equate it, but can be like natural blood thinners. Like they can kind of
Mhm.
move the blood in a way where it'll help people with, high blood pressure. But again, this is nothing that, you wouldn't want to do without kind of consulting with the physician. You don't just want to be doing this stuff kind of like, um, casually, but it's really interesting, the studies. And like I said, I can't really verbatim say because I'm not like a big biology person, so I'm not good at kind of remembering all the statistics, but it is really cool with technology and with science right now and how they're really able to show how these herbs are impacting at a molecular level in the body.
Mhm.
So from like a Chinese medicine point of view, like I know what they're doing with the body and kind of the intentions, but now it's like studies can show, biomedically what they're doing with the body. It's really cool.
Yeah, it is really cool. I'll just interject something here for a moment. Um, so I am still taking, probably forever, I guess, Coumadin or
Mm-hmm.
generic form.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say this, don't, please, Marissa, don't feel weird about it. Um, my dosage had to change after I started the detox tea.
Mm-hmm.
I get
Yeah.
tested every week, and it was actually
Mm-hmm.
really, I was much thinner than I should have been. Not
Mm-hmm.
physically, I wish I was,
Mm-hmm.
but the blood
Mm-hmm.
thickness.
Mm-hmm.
And so they adjusted, and it's fine now.
Good.
Uh, I drink 2 cups of this per day,
Mm-hmm.
and that's it. Because if I drink more, I'm afraid I'm going to have to change my Coumadin.
Yeah.
But I don't
Yeah.
want to like
Yeah.
have to wait 5 days to change it when I don't know. I'm not worried about it, but
Yeah.
what if
Yeah.
I some get hit by something and I internally bleed? Because that can happen
Yeah.
if you're on a blood thinner. So
Yeah.
what I want to say as a blood clot survivor and a person who's
Mm-hmm.
on Coumadin is definitely look into doing something with herbs if you feel like you want to do that, but also make sure that you're monitoring your dosage of your blood thinner. If you're,
Sure.
it's that
Yeah.
some thinners don't get affected by anything really, but
Mm-hmm.
Coumadin
Mm-hmm.
does.
Yeah, for sure.
So be careful. And it
Yeah.
comes back to what we were talking about earlier. And this would be a good example of where you and the West, what you do, and then the traditional Western doctor, and we have to work
Mm-hmm.
together
Yes,
We have to work
exactly.
together. It's not even
Yeah.
like we should. We kind of have to. That's cool. A guy like Dr. Berry, though, really understands uh, the value in what you do
Mm-hmm.
and good nutrition. His first, I don't know if you know, because I work with a lot of his patients
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of people to me. And first question he asks them, "What'd you have for dinner last night?"
Yeah.
He wants to know what you're putting in the body, you know.
Yeah.
So let's see. Let me just check out something. So we have talked about so many things. If anybody has questions, we've got maybe. Do you have like another 10 minutes or so? Are
Yeah.
you cool? All right.
Yeah.
If anyone has questions, type them in the chat box here on Zoom, or in the comments on the Facebook feed, because I'm monitoring that. Migraines and painful conditions. Sports. Do you have a particular, let's say, most common thing that somebody comes to see you for?
Yeah, I would say right now it's pretty much like painful conditions. So whether it's my shoulders hurt, my neck hurts, my back hurts, those type of things. And I've been dealing with a lot of GI disorder type of things. So whether IBS, Crohn's disease, and inflammatory conditions, which can be correlated, but also like a lot of fibromyalgia. It's been really surprising to me the amount of fibro patients that have come into me to seek treatment. So that's been really interesting.
So I remember when fibro was really not recognized
Mm-hmm.
as a thing,
Yeah.
but it is a thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So in this in these treatments, when you're working with somebody, do you have a like a go-to, like a first thing after the intake form and you get them on the table? Is it like, are you doing acupuncture if they're cool with that first, or just kind
Yeah,
of
that's
curious?
yeah, normally that's what I always do. Like I said earlier, if I have a patient that has like high anxiety or I can tell is like really nervous, I'll typically do like a relaxation protocol with the acupressure points just to kind of help calm down everything. But that's pretty much what I do. Sometimes if it's like a painful type of condition, I'll kind of do Tui Na, which is body work, but you're basically utilizing like an acupuncture lens where you're looking at the meridians, you're feeling down the channels, kind of seeing, is there excess here, is the muscle like swollen, is there a temperature difference, you're kind of feeling for that. So sometimes if I am about to do some needling, I will do like some Tui Na to kind of help loosen up a muscle before I put in a needle, because that kind of helps with comfortability
Mhm.
wise. And then typically after that, I'll, depending on what's going on, I might do like the Gua Sha or cupping, things like that.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, all of this is so interesting. Well, let me ask you this. So for people who are able to come and see you, where's the best place for them to find you, get a hold of you, and uh and work with you?
Yeah, so I mean, I have my website, which is Energy Acu Wellness, and I can put that in the chat box or whatever you guys
Okay.
need.
I'll make sure there's a
Uh,
link in the YouTube description and then the comments on Facebook too.
Yeah, that's
As
great. And I
I've
also do
got it here.
telehealth sessions too. So
Oh,
even
great.
for people who are, not in the area, obviously I can't do acupuncture
Hmm.
over a Zoom call, but I can do kind of like herbal type of therapies or just kind of lifestyle dietary type of consultations as well. So I do offer that.
Oh,
But
that'd be
yeah, that's
great.
really like the best place to reach me is through my website or my email, which is just energy.acu.wellness at
Okay.
gmail.com.
Yeah, we have
So
people from all over the world who I
yeah.
know. So yeah, telehealth people, we're in that time right now where we all do some Zooming for our
Yes.
advice and medicine and all that, and even some workouts here and there. I learned a lot today.
It was great being here. Thank you for having me being able to talk about, acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine.
I'm really fascinated. I think we should probably do it again because I have a lot more questions, just not
Yeah.
enough time to go with the questions.
Yeah.
Really, when I look at it though, I think about how we are so complex, and it's so amazing how
Mhm.
seriously when just one system
Yeah.
diminishes in function, is connected to everything else, and it can
Yes.
diminish other functions. And
Hmm.
I'm so amazed. Even just emotions, the limbic system. It's like you
Yeah.
can't really feel that. You can't physically touch your emotions,
Yeah.
or can you? You know what I mean? It's so interesting.
It really is, and that's part of kind of going back to like leaky gut, but looking at the microbiome, which is like your gut essentially, and kind of all the flora that you have in there. And there's been a lot of studies showing kind of like emotions, especially stress, how it can impact like the microorganisms in your gut and your microbiome, which can cause inflammation. There's a lot of really cool studies going on right now, in terms of the gut and kind of everything with these inflammatory conditions. It's fascinating.
So here's a question that's a little bit out there. I just thought of it. I've been following this gentleman, Dr. David Sinclair. He's at Harvard. He wrote a book. I can't remember the name of it, but it has to do basically with life extension, just living longer, keeping your
Mhm,
cells, the cellular structure
mhm,
healthier. Um,
mhm,
Last night I was reading, and it was really interesting, and not the book, but something else that he wrote, a publication
mhm.
about how. Have you ever heard of? I'm just curious, so I'm going out there. I'm taking a risk here, but like trauma from a
Mhm,
family member
mhm,
who like your father, your mother, your grandfather, grandmother,
mhm.
and how that trauma from that person can actually be part of your uh, uh, genome. Is it? I don't know the
Mm,
right words.
okay. Uh-huh.
Have you ever run into anything like that where somebody comes in and says, my grandfather was run over by a train or something,
Uh-huh.
and I'm afraid of trains. I don't know. That's kind of a ridiculous example, but
No, no, it's like honestly, it's really interesting to me because, I've been reading this book about Buddhism, and kind of looking into that realm. And it's really interesting to me because the author, he talks about how we are like our ancestors, we are our mother, our father, like
mm,
everything combined, like,
mhm.
and so it's really it makes us the person we are. So kind of looking from even just that perspective, it doesn't surprise me, like if something happened to a family member, how it wouldn't impact you, whether it's through like your DNA or like a subconscious type of thing.
Yeah,
Like, I mean, that to me doesn't sound like, that far fetched of an idea.
I didn't think so either, because I don't
Yeah.
know. Back in the '90s, especially, I read all these books like Celestine Prophecy and all this other stuff. I found it really fascinating. But when it
Yeah.
came down to things that, when when we're traumatized in some way or other,
Hmm.
um, you know, can that travel the downline to
Yeah.
kids,
Yeah.
descendants? And it probably can. Well,
Well, I mean,
I'll look
we know
more
that
into it.
certain
And mhm.
Yeah. I mean, we know that certain like mental health disorders, like whether it's depression or bipolarness, that can sometimes be hereditary, so
Mm,
it's,
absolutely,
yeah.
yes.
So I can see how there could be a correlation.
I have one more question,
Yeah.
and this just reminded me of something when you said that. What about somebody who struggles with alcohol
Mm-hmm.
and drinking a lot?
Yeah.
How can you help? Can you help? I'm sure you can.
I mean, yeah, but again, kind of like, patient, I don't know what the patient wants, because it's like, I can be
True. Yeah.
doing
Yeah.
acupuncture, I can be doing all the herbs in the world, but it's like as a patient, if you're not going to want to make the changes, there is going to be a limit to how much I can do, because
True.
I
Yep.
can, if you're having like a fatty liver or cirrhosis of the liver or something like that, and you're having pain, like I can maybe help temporary take away the pain in that area, but I'm not going to reverse your cirrhosis by any means or get rid of
Right.
it if you're not willing to make those changes.
Just curious. I know of families who have generations of
Mm,
alcoholics just
mhm,
all the way
mhm.
down the line, and
Yeah,
it's that's actually really sad.
yeah, yeah,
But there could be other addictions too. It could be,
of course.
just let's say addictive tendencies
Mhm.
for a substance. So getting your dopamine
Yeah,
fix from outside of your body rather than exercise or something or whatever makes you
yeah,
feel good. Uh, yeah. Well, this has been fantastic, Marissa. I really appreciate
yeah. Thank you for having
all
me.
that you do and your knowledge and taking the time to share with people. We've had a lot of people on who are watching, and thank you everyone for watching. I will shortly this morning sometime I'll put in her Marissa's website link so you can contact her, because remember she does telehealth too. So well, thanks. Yeah, I'll see you
Thank
at
you.
the studio sometime. I'll be there later
Yes.
today. Maybe I'll see you
Yeah.
or over the weekend or something.
Yeah, I'll be there.
All right, cool.
All right.
Thank you everyone for watching. Thank you, Marissa. I'll see you soon.
Yes. Have a good one, guys. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye now. Bye-bye.
Bye.